Welcome to Corpradar and IR 4.0 Corporate Media House. And today we are going to discuss about APIs in the banking industry. As we know, the transition is taking place at a very rapid pace. So we have a couple of questions, and to answer them, we have with us Mr. Abhijit Dey. He is the Vice President and Product Head at the API Bankings, WhatsApp and chatbots at Axis Bank. So we have some questions, and we want you to answer them for us, Mr. Abhijit.
Sure. Thanks. Thanks, Tania. Thanks for having me here. Right. It's a pleasure for me to be in such a in such a cordial forum, right, where I have seen many other industry experts. They have also shared their views, right, and I'm happy to share my views, right, and I'll share my experience here.
Thank you so much. So actually, we know that data security and privacy are such a paramount issues in the banking industry. So being the leader in the API banking and open source API solutions that you provide, can you shed some light that intricate technical aspects involved in the integrating various banking systems through API while actually securing the security and compliance part of it?
Sure. See, one common term about data, right? We all say this, that data is the fuel, right? That is running your digital economy, right? If this is the saying about data, in that case, I'll say APIs are the pipeline through which this data are being transmitted from one system to another system, and the way data democratization is happening across the systems, across the institutes, right? Now data are not only residing within bank, it is being shared legitimately, consensually with other organizations, right? That's what we are seeing in account aggregator platform. So API being the transporter, right, being the main transmission engine for all this data, it has to be very secure, right? It has to be frameworked in such a way that whatever I'm sharing, be it a data or information, it should be in a consensual way. The consent management should be kept in a very crisp way. Also, at the same time, your data which you are storing at your ecosystem, it has to be secure, right? Every single use or uses of your data has to be tracked, right? So this is how all the banks in India, not only in India, if you see the global standards, right? In Europe, we already have got GDPR. There are sayings around that in India also the data protection laws are coming up, right? Maybe, probably we'll have it in this year only. After that, the entire data demography, the sharing of data, the ecosystem around data will get changed, and that time APIs will play a huge role. I mean, we are already playing a huge role now. Now, after that data protection law, this role will be very significant, right? And that time you will see the change in the industry, and not only in banking industry, across all the industry, you will see the change and dependence on APIs, right?
Definitely. Now, actually, it takes me to a point where we have cybersecurity concerns also. Can you mention how we can address such concerns if such concerns arise?
Concern on cybersecurity. See, the main thing is that if you go back to 5-6 years ago, right, when open banking started in Europe, it started with PSD2, right? It's a open payment ecosystem they created. Similarly, we also created here UPI, right? But if you see UPI or any instant payment, the number of subscriber, number of users we are having in India, and the number of users we are having in Europe, it's huge. You have seen how UPI or this instant payment system being appreciated across the globe. So this is a brighter side, but behind every brighter picture, there are some dark side, right? And the dark side is the fraudulent activities. The dark side is the risk of cybersecurity, because the more you are giving freedom to your users to make digital payment, the propensity of getting fraud will also be higher, right? So the norms, the regulations I do believe that uh, RBI, NPCI, all these governing body, all these control function bodies, uh, they are cognizant of this fact, right? That's why, I mean, you can't imagine that. I mean, a couple of days ago, I was seeing one advertisement of RBI where I saw Mr. Bachchan is talking about data security, cyber security, right? Cognitive banking and all. So these all are the sign where we are acknowledging the fact that cybersecurity is a big concern now, and we need to get over it, right? Now, the problem here is for cybersecurity, there is always a chance of day zero attack, right? What is day zero attack? Day zero attack are the attacks where the um, the way they attack us, that the way the hackers attack our system, the pattern is unknown, right? So these type of day zero attack sometimes are difficult, right? But the way we are creating the ecosystem, we are binding and guarding our ecosystem across the banks and across other industries, and the way RBI and other control function bodies are guiding us. I think the number of cases will be lower for sure in next 1 or 2 years. In fact, if you see today also, the number of transaction we are having, and in front of that number of transaction, the number of cases, the number of fraudulent activities we are getting, right? That is very less. So in a way, it's a success model, but I think I mean, maybe in 1 or 2 years, this will be reduced at least 80 to 90%, right?
That's really great. So coming to the actually the financial industry, it's a legacy system, right? Which is coming from a lot of decades. So now the traditional infrastructure is there. How you actually navigate the complexities of these legacy systems while implementing API banking solutions, and in what strategies you deploy to overcome the inherent resistance to the change?
See, why, I mean, to answer this, right? First, we need to figure out why we are saying banking industry is a legacy industry. The reason behind banking in the world, right? It's running for over 100 years, right? And money is such a matter where your emotions, I mean, customer's emotion, customer hard work, everything is involved, right? It's a very, intricate matter rather, if you see that way. So when you are dealing with others' money, when you are dealing with others' securities, right? That time, all the applications which you are having, it has to be in a uh, very conventional way, in a very secure way, right? You cannot be very open with it. But with times, what we have seen, there are emerging technologies coming up in other industries. And for example, cloud, right? Till 2016-17, it was hard to fathom for us to implement cloud in banks. But if you see today, the banks are coming up with the cloud technologies. For example, our bank, right? We are already moved to our cloud. I know there are in many other banks in India, they're also moving their applications into cloud. Now, we don't see it in a legacy way, right? All of our applications, wherever any need of uh, upgrade is required, right? We are upgrading it. And here, the main support we are getting from the API first technology. So there is an architecture being involved here. It's called API first architecture, where everything, all the applications within your ecosystem will talk to each other via API. Earlier, these applications used to talk through the database, right? So there are direct DB connections where SQL queries used to fetch data from other table, which are very vulnerable, right? Which are not so secure. But with this API first architecture, all these new modernizations are happening, right? And if I have to go back to the first question where you asked that how API and data work together, right? So these applications are storing data. Data are being transmitted from one application to another application with the API first architecture. So that is how this entire scenario, this entire ecosystem we are building, right?
So now coming to the point of scalability, it's a very critical aspect when it comes to the API banking, and especially
Hmm.
considering the vast amount of data and transactions involved. Can you elaborate the complexities while scaling, and what are the strategies you actually ensure to perform and to make it more seamless and reliable to the users as well as to the banks?
See, whatever we do it for our customer, right? And probably it's not we in any industry. Ultimately, whatever we are doing for the customer. If customers are happy, then only you will see your revenue. And at the same time, you will have to be compliant with all the rules and regulations given by your control function bodies, right? Now, when we are modernizing any application or when we are digitizing any of our journey, right? At that time, uh, we are using APIs only. We are using API to modernize this journey. So, for example, uh, let's say there is a requirement where we need to identify a particular entity, whether he is a existing bank customer or not, right? For that, earlier there were different web services, different methods, but now we are using API. So using a small API, we can very easily identify whether Tanya is a account holder or not, right? Now this same API we can reutilize into multiple journeys, multiple applications. So this actually reducing the cost, reducing the overhead, right? Also at the same time, the security, because I know if this API is today working in one application, the same will work in another application also, because these APIs are time tested. So that's how we are uh, building our API ecosystem. We are building our API first architecture, and this API first architecture, it has uh, a couple of pillars, right? For example, standardization of APIs, a very well documented API, and also the analytics. See, in case of API, the problem, I mean, one of the major problems are when you are modernizing your ecosystem, when you are uh, developing or creating multiple APIs, there are times when few of the APIs you forgot to deprecate, and these APIs will be there in your system. Maybe you are not utilizing it, but it will remain there. And we call these zombie APIs, right? Now, these zombie APIs are really a painful affair. I mean, sometimes this API started working and it will create a ruckus into your ecosystem. So at that time, you need to identify these type of zombie APIs. So that's why we need a very good API analytics measure where we can see which all APIs we are using, which all are not, which all are getting old, where you need a new versions and all. So these are the pillars we are building around API first architecture. And that actually helps uh, any organization to modernize their ecosystem, to give a better customer experience to their customers. Also, this gives you a framework, a governance framework through which you can see everything in black and white, that these are the things or these are the data which are required, these are the data which are not required. So this type of conformance also you can get using this API first architecture, right?
That actually brings me to the next question, that they are the backbone of the digital ecosystem, right? And also APIs create dependencies and interconnections into like the systems, and they create some vulnerabilities. So how do you actually manage the complexities of API dependence, that how the risk associated with it, also the potential failures and disruptions happens? So these kind of different kind of platforms, protocols, and standards are there in maintaining these interoperabilities. So how do you do that?
Um, as we all know, I mean, whenever you are adopting a new age technology, right, it has its own pros and cons, right? Now, in API also, I mean, API is no, I mean, nothing, I mean, uncommon here, right? It's conventionally, it has its own merits, it has its own demerits, but it's up to you who are managing these APIs or this entire ecosystem. They should know how to manage the cons or how to manage the demerits, right? So, first of all, whenever you are building an API first approach, you need to build a governance, you need to build a framework. That framework should categorize the severity of the API, right? There are APIs where PII data are involved. There you need to put it in as a very high critical or highly risk API. There are APIs where not so not PII data, but few of the confidential data are going. So there you need to put medium risk. There are APIs which are publishing data or information which are available publicly, right, in public domain. So for such API, you can put it in a low risk. Now, on the uses also, who will use this API? What all authentications you will have in these APIs? Because APIs work around authentications, right? And unlike Google Map API or other Facebook or social media API, in banking industry or any other industry where we are dealing with customer data, there all the APIs has to be authenticated. Now, for authentication, there are multiple authentication layers available in the market. But also at the same time, you also need to think about your own authentication tokenized layer through which you can actually identify the entity or the user who is calling this API, right? And you need to have a very good API gateway with a top layer security so that you can throttle the request. You can identify any any threat in advance. For example, let's say if one of a user he's using an API average 5 times in a day, and all of a sudden there is a surge, and you start seeing that there are 50, 60 hits are coming. There should be an alarm mechanism in your system that should identify the advanced threat. So this type of governance framework you need to build first. So before you start developing your API, you should first have the governance. You should have the framework, and you implement it across the organization, right? I know for large organization, across organization, it's a little difficult to roll it out on the very first day, but at least by the time you are publishing your APIs, right, 20-25% APIs are published. By that time, you should have that framework. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for any head of API kind of people to manage this type of mess. Right?
So now we see that there are a lot of different kind of technological advancements. Let's say AI is coming, machine learning is also there. So
Mm,
how
mm.
are we incorporating these technologies in the API and to enhance actually the decision making and risk management part? Also, the customer experience is also involved. So how things are going on the ethical considerations as well as how to implement such technologies on a vast scale.
See, AI in for last couple of months, probably AI this will be the mostly uttered word in the technology area, right? Whenever we are talking about anything, we are going for AI, and API without AI is not possible. Or you can say other way around also, that AI without API is possible. Okay. So now the point here is, see, Tanya, if I can give you some use case where AI can help any API ecosystem or API driven ecosystem. One is in the discovery. So normally organizations, they are using APIs for last 7-8 years, right? API first architecture has already been successfully rolled out in multiple organizations, right? So the number of APIs in any organization is very high, right? So sometimes what we feel that the discovery part, where to find out that in for my use case, what is the best API I have, or what is the best API that could help me to meet this use case. There are lots of mechanical deliberations happen, right? Where we brainstorm our mind to find out the best API. I think AI will help us in this part to identify and discover the best API that will suit my requirement. Just imagine an organization where they're having 8 to 10,000 APIs, and from that you need to figure out one API that will, or one or two API that will create a new product. Now for this, I mean, there are 4 or 5 API product managers there brainstorming themselves. Instead of that, let's say there are some AI tool. That tool is actually designed by this, or this tool is actually fed by these product managers, and based on the product managers requirement, these tools are coming up and showing us the best API for our use case. So that is one huge benefit we can leverage from AI. Also on the security part, where I mean, I was in a forum a couple of days back, where there were a few people, they were talking about how using AI we can reduce the threat, right? We can reduce the propensity of fraudulent transactions. So this is another domain where AI can help us. Production, where we can analyze the behavior of customer. We can analyze the uh, pattern of user, right, when he's calling these APIs. So their AI can help us to identify these type of patterns, right? So these are the key features where we can get help of AI. And other than this, there are multiple uses. See, it all depends how you are utilizing your technology, right? It all depends how you are envisaging your goal. As of now, these are the things where I think AI can definitely help us. Maybe in near future we can coming up with more use cases.
Yes. So now API bankings have actually opened new doorways, new opportunities for collaborations between traditional banks and fintech startups. Can you discuss the
Hmm.
complexities involved in actually establishing these kind of partnerships, such as aligning different organizational cultures, technology stacks, and business models?
Yeah. So see, if we see in last couple of years, we all are talking about financial inclusions, right? Financial inclusion means we need to bring more and more customers. We need to bring more and more individuals into banking, into finance, because in our country, uh, there are many people who are not doing direct banking. There are many of our citizens, they are not into direct banking. For that, I think it is very important if we build a collaborative approach with the fintechs who has a better, uh, you can say, who has a better outreach in the market in certain pockets, right? And we can back them with our APIs. We can back them with our digital journey so that they can source on behalf of us, right? So the concept of DSA, the concept is little old now. We are coming up with a concept like digital DSAs or strategic partnership, where fintechs will source for us. They will serve our customer in a better way. So we also have got concept called connected banking, where SMEs or you know uh, MSMEs, they can do the banking from their ecosystem. So the ERP they are using their ERP only, they can do the banking. They need not to be dependent upon our digital ecosystems, right? So these are the freedom and these are the liberties we can extend to our customers, right? And it's a win-win for both the parties, right? So fintechs, they are also extending their outreach. They are also reaching out to multiple of customers. Also, at the same time, we are giving a better experience. We are giving the better service to our customer. So I think it's a complete win-win thing. But also, we need to be cognizant about one thing, is that banks are highly regulated, right? Banks are the you can say, we are the uh, stakeholders on people's money, right? So whenever we are publishing something, it has to be uh, um, within the limitation of the rules and regulation given by Central Bank of India, right? And we cannot go beyond that, and we shouldn't, right? So the way we are exposing, the way we are extending our APIs, the way we are extending our services to the fintechs or to the strategic partners, uh, it has to be adherent to the compliance given by the RBI, right? So here we have to agree to this point, right? And I know there are times when we think that the journeys can be better and all, but within regulations, you'll have to do whatever you want to do, right? So you cannot go beyond that. So that's a side story of this entire partnership thing, right? But otherwise, it has a very huge future, and it is. If you see in last couple of years, the way these co-branded partnership or the alliance partnership or the new digital DSA partnership has increased, it actually shows the number. It actually shows the result.
Now, coming to the end, actually, I just want you to ask for an advice. So, what advice would you give to the financial institutions and the fintech companies looking to embrace API bankings and open source APIs into their operations?
So, if you ask me a mantra, a success mantra for a successful API banking thing, the first is that build a governance, build a framework, and onboard all the stakeholders in that framework, right? You should know whenever you are talking about API, what all things you can do, what all you cannot, right? So this should be in black and white. This should be in clear, and it has to be documented in such in some place, right? Secondly, whenever you are building API, don't consider API as a endpoint or as a URL. Now it has become a complete product. So it has a life cycle like any other product. It has a packaging like any other product. You have to distribute these APIs also. When you build some product, there has to be a section, there has to be a last line. Yeah, there has to be a last mile delivery, right? So similarly, in case of API also, whenever you are building an API product, it should have a complete use case. It has a business value. Just because others are building an API, that's why I'm building. Don't fall in that psychology, right? You will end up with lots of questions to be faced, right? Also, at the same time, build the governance, target your market. There should be a clear idea about your TAM, right? Your TAM, you should know that whom all you can reach with your APIs. And lastly, there should be a very easy onboarding for your customers, right? Those days are gone when we just used to give an API URL and some FSDs, and we ask our customers to just call the API. Now they are also very informative. They know how other banks and other peers in other continents they are working, right? So they expect the same thing from us. So we need to build a complete documentation. It has to be very well packaged, very well shipped, and very easy onboarding they are looking for, right? So you need to build a complete product suite using API. And for building a product, all the design thinking and all the governance framework and all, you all need that, right? So that's my suggestion for building a API banking.
Thank you so much, Abhijit, for answering all the questions in a wonderful manner. And it was so good to have you today.
Same here. Same here.
Thank
Okay.
you so much.
Thank you.